Hey guys, this is Lindsay with Garage Reviews. Today we are going to talk about the Titan Smith machine. I'm not talking about a treadmill. I hope you guys are sitting down when I said that. I don't want anybody to faint and pass out. I am not held responsible for this. But yes, we are doing a strength-based piece of equipment today, so hold on to your hat. Now, Smith machines are obviously completely different than what you would experience with like free weights, right? They are really good at isolating muscle groups, but totally different than what free weights would provide you. So let's take this squat, for example. If you are squatting on a squat rack, you are engaging a lot more raw power. Like that is going to be kind of your focus. If you are squatting on a Smith machine, you are definitely going to be focusing more on isolating certain muscle groups. With the squat particularly, you might be really isolating those hamstrings and those glutes. So it just kind of depends on what you're training, what your focus is. There's not one that's better or worse. Again, it's just totally up to what your goals are. Before we talk more specifically about this Titan Smith machine, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Also, if you want to go ahead and purchase this, we have placed a link below the like button. When you use that link, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does give us a small commission, and we greatly appreciate it when you do that. And lastly, this was sent to us by the company, but I am honest in my reviews. We just like to say that for transparency's sake. So let's talk more about the Titan Smith machine. Now, one benefit, and a lot of people will say, like, for beginners particularly, a Smith machine might be better because overall it's a safer machine. So you're not having to learn how to like bail out. And especially if you are somebody who is working out a lot without a spotter available, this is probably going to be a better option. So if you don't have access to like a spotter arm or a spotter or some sort of mechanism that's going to keep you safer, then look at a Smith machine because it has catches along the inside rail that essentially, if you get stuck at any point during your squat, during your bench, all you have to do is kind of like flip that bar forward in order to catch the catches, and it becomes a lot more safer for you, especially working out as an individual. Now, talking about the catches particularly, this is kind of like one thing that I want to call out about it. I wish that there were more available. They kind of stop about a third of the way from the bottom. I do think that the design could have been improved by adding a few more of those safety catches along the bottom, and also probably would have given you a little bigger of a range of motion that you'd be able to work with. But because of the multiple catches, the multiple hooks, you are able to push yourself maybe a little bit harder, give you a little bit more confidence to push yourself harder when you're doing any sort of movement. Now, with this Titan Smith machine particularly, this is an angled design. So you have an angled design, you have a vertical design, and then you also have a single axis and a dual axis. With this Titan Smith machine, it is a single axis angled design. Now, personally, I like an angled design, particularly if you're focusing on lower body movements. I do think it's a little bit more beneficial than a vertical design. If you are somebody who wants to buy a Smith machine, but your main purpose is maybe more upper body stuff, then maybe look at a vertical design. But let's look like there's a couple reasons that I think an angled design is a little bit better, especially when it comes to lower body movements. So the first one would be improved muscle activation. Because of the way of its angled design, you're able to move in a little bit more natural movement pattern. And when you're moving in that more natural movement pattern, you're actually able to activate and develop those muscle groups a little bit more. Another reason is it reduces joint stress. Now, obviously a vertical design also reduces joint stress, but again, you're moving in a little bit more natural way, and so you're taking a little bit more pressure off of your joints. And particularly if you have any sort of mobility issues, an angled design also might be a little bit more comfortable for you. And then third, range of motion. With an angled design, you do get a little bit more, again, natural movement, a little bit bigger range of motion. Not to say that a vertical design can't give you that as well. And these are obviously just my opinions, but in terms of what my goals are, what I'm looking for, a more natural movement pattern, a little bit less stress on my joints, and a better way to engage and develop the muscles I'm looking to do that, I do like the angled design a lot better. Now, this Titan Smith machine is counterbalance. So we went ahead, weighed the bar with the luggage scale. It comes out at about 15 pounds of feel weight, which means that there's 15 pounds on each side of the Titan Smith machine to counterbalance that. So your feel weight on the bar is 15 pounds. This also is a 45-pound Olympic bar with knurling. Now, this does have what I think is a super, super passive volcano knurling. I think for a Smith machine, it's fine, but it's definitely not the most grippy bar. If you're doing any sort of deadlift or RDL, something that you really want the like knurling to eat into your hands because you're going heavy, I'd probably use straps with this, to be honest, because the knurling again was pretty passive. but for most movements, I think it's totally fine. Now, specifically about the bar, it does come with ribbed sleeves, so that is something that a lot of people like. I actually like it as well because I think that it keeps the weight on that bar a little bit easier. And then the end caps are also rounded, just making applying the weight onto the bar a little bit more smoother, a little bit more easier. Now, this is a linear bearing design, allowing you to load a lot more weight while maintaining a proper form. Now, don't watch like the crazy videos on TikTok of people loading up a bunch of weight and doing like God knows what at a commercial gym on a Smith machine. But the intent of this, and again with the linear bearing design, is just to allow you to add a lot of weight while maintaining proper form and again being a little bit more safer. Now, this Titan Smith machine is definitely big. It measures 87 inches across, 75 inches in width, and then 54 inches in depth. This definitely requires a lot of space in order for you to use it, but one benefit of a Smith machine, at least in my mind, is the ability to do a ton of exercises on it. I mean, you've got like RDLs, deadlifts, good mornings, you've got bench, you've got seated presses. There are a lot of movements that you can get out of this machine. There are 6 weight horns on the back of this, so you can easily stack your weight. They're about 17 inches apart, so you're able to load on like big bumper plates or tiny iron plates, whatever you need to do. Now, talking about the safety catches, like I said at the beginning, I do think you can add in a little bit more. There's about 8 inches that you could have dropped the safety mechanism and added a few more catches at the bottom in order to just get a little bit more out of the machine, but that's like such a minor call out. But I think it is worth noting. Because the safety catches on the bottom are so high, if you are wanting to do deadlifts or RDLs, you are going to have to do some workarounds, potentially standing on a box in order to get that full range of motion. I know especially for me doing RDLs, I like to make sure that I'm at the bottom engaging that full stretch on my hamstrings, and I wasn't able to do that. I did have to stand on like 2 45 bumper plates in order to make that happen. Now, there are rubber padding on the bottom of this. One, it's just going to protect your gym flooring, but also I do think it adds a little bit more stability to the overall machine. And this is a super stable machine. Like, there was no sort of like give to it when we were using it. Even when we loaded up like my heavy weight, right? Like, it still did a really good job of maintaining its structure, and it didn't move around at all, as well as being incredibly smooth while I used it. I mean, it glided on that rail perfectly. There wasn't any sort of like hitching. Like, even on some cheaper Smith machines, I'll notice that the bar doesn't come up like parallel with me. It will kind of like hitch on one side and then hitch on the other. This was honestly ultra smooth. It took about 40 minutes for 2 people to assemble this, and I do think you definitely need 2 people because, again, the width of it. So basically, one person will have to hold something in place while the other person is on the other side doing something. And then another thing to note, the instructions come with pictures and then written words. So there are some pages that only have pictures available. And if you are not careful, you could easily put this thing together a little bit backwards, which a lot of people online did. So as you are assembling this yourself, make sure you go through it just like super slow and pay attention to exactly what the pictured instructions are, so that you're not having to like backtrack and put it together all over again. The overall product weight on this is 260 pounds. I'm kind of surprised. We have treadmills heavier than that. So even though it is a little bit awkward to move around and doesn't have wheels on the bottom to move around, I still think 2 people could easily move this around if you needed to. The weight capacity on this is 600 pounds. So if you are somebody who's lifting heavier than that, I would steer clear from this. But if you are lifting, up to 600 pounds, you're totally good. And even at the higher weight capacities, this is still super solid and super smooth. Another kind of feature that it has is these banded pegs at the bottom for added resistance to your bar, which I really like. So if you are at that higher weight capacity, you want to add on some resistance, it does have those options available for you. This is finished with a really nice black powder coating. I think the overall design is simple. It looks really clean. And even though it is a larger piece of machine, it doesn't feel like a bulky monstrosity to me. So if you decide to go ahead and order this, make sure you order it before 1 p.m. CST, because on their website, it says that if you order before 1 p.m. CST, they almost 100% can guarantee that it will ship that day, meaning that it's just going to get to your house really quickly. To close this out, who do I think this is good for? I think this is good for people who are starting off their weightlifting. I think this is good for somebody who doesn't have an available spotter, or somebody who's working out by themselves a lot and just wants to make sure that they are being safe. or somebody who has maybe just like one spot to have a machine, you don't have the big enough space for a full squat rack, I think that you can do almost just as much in just a little bit of a different way. Or those who are just looking to activate more muscle groups and like really hone in on muscle activation versus just like raw power and strength. But ultimately, let me know what you guys think in the comments. This has been Lindsay with Garage Gym Reviews. Peace.